Hello, I'm Alec Baldwin, and I'd like to talk to you about some of the amazing things the Screen Actors Guild Foundation does that you may not have heard about. The SAG Foundation is a nonprofit organization that helps to ensure that all actors have the support they need to follow their dreams. This includes providing a catastrophic health care safety net. When actors need help, we're there for them. Offering master classes and seminars so actors can work on perfecting their craft, as well as the opportunity to use their gift of storytelling to join the fight for children's literacy in their own communities and on the web. The SAG Foundation relies on contributions from people like you, so please visit us at sagfoundation.org to find out more about these programs and all the things your tax-deductible donations can help us do. Support the SAG Foundation. Act now.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for those who are viewing on the live stream. We are excited to have this event. It is an exciting time for Audible to come join us and share more about voiceover and specifically audiobook narration. My main announcement that we ask for you to do is to please consider donating. As Alex said, this events and many events like it only happen because of donations and grants. We do not get your dues or initiation fees. We are a nonprofit organization. I did a tally, and we had 28 events between CAP, Conversations, and LifeRaft alone in December. It's a lot of events we offer you guys. So imagine if you could pay $1 a month, $5 a month, how much that would equal when we have over 160,000 SAG and AFTRA members. So please consider as much as you can so we can do even more events. So with that, let's get started. And please welcome from Vice President of Audible, Jason Oljavo.
Hey everyone. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. I'm powering through on some Starbucks, having just flown in from New York and not having slept last night. So it's gonna be fun. And let's get started. So we have a little presentation that I'll give for just about 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to bring on Hillary Huber, Pat Fraley, and Scott Brick. Three real stalwarts in the audiobook industry to talk about the craft of audiobook narration. But first I want to talk a little bit about kind of how you break into the audiobook industry, how to prepare a demo, who are the players in the audiobook space that you'll want to be sending your demo to, and how you can get your start. Here we go. So I'll talk about who is Audible, why are we here, what are we doing, skills you need to have to become an audiobook narrator, how to break into the business, and then there's a business that Audible launched that I run called ACX, the Audiobook Creation Exchange, and thousands of actors are finding a lot of work there, so we'll talk about that for a minute or two. And a lot of people ask about our rates with SAG and AFTRA, both Audible's rates and ACX's rates. We'll get into that, and then we'll bring on the three pros. So Audible is the leading retailer of audiobooks and spoken word entertainment. We have 7 studios based in Newark, New Jersey, but we also work with a handful of partner studios out here in LA and throughout the country as well. So most of you here live in LA, and we'll talk a little bit about who some of those studios are and how you can meet them. Finally, Audible is a division of Amazon.com. They bought us a couple years back, so that's helped us expand the audiobook space and help us expand our studios as well. So Audible, as a retailer, we're very focused on what customers like and winning, finding customers, making them happy, keeping them customers, and what that means for us is providing them with great audiobooks, and what that entails is not only a well-written book, but more importantly, great acting and a great audiobook performance. And we understand that's very important to the audiobook listeners, which is why we're here talking to you to cultivate a wider array of audiobook narrators and also be training the next generation of audiobook narrators and work with actors who might have backgrounds in theater or film or television and haven't tried out audiobooks, but we really think that you should. So we're always looking for new talent. We're producing thousands of audiobooks every year in our studios, in our partner studios. There's a lot of work to go around. And then next, and finally, we'll talk about ACX, as I mentioned before, in a couple slides. Here we go. What makes a good audiobook narrator? And the other three guys are going to get a lot deeper into this, but basically it's you got to have great acting chops. Generally, the actors come from a theatrical background and have theater training, and these are actors that take hard work over the glamour. It's not the sexiest thing to go into a studio, a little box sometimes, for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day and run this marathon of audiobook narration. It's not a sprint. It's not a 30-second spot. You're not, redoing your lines 20 times. This is, just hours upon hours of performing an audiobook. It's a one-person show. It's a really intense gig. So, any of you who've tried it before, it's difficult. And those of you who haven't tried it before, you'll find out it's really not for everybody. But if it's the right thing for you, you're going to love it, and there's a lot of work to be had. What you need is good stamina, great breath control. You have to speak extremely clearly. You have to have real facility with accents and different dialects. Separate the characters in very subtle ways. You're not here to do kind of a cartoon voice with 20 different crazy voices, but really tell this story in a way where each character is subtly different, and so you're not getting in the way of the text and the narrative, but you're kind of moving the story along and making it clear who is speaking when, and develop these characters accordingly. And this is the kind of stuff really that Scott and Pat and Hillary are going to dive into in a couple minutes. How do you get into audiobook narration? Step one, which unfortunately not everybody does first, is you got to listen to great audiobooks. Understand what makes a good audiobook, what makes you want to listen for 9 or 10 hours in a row to a great book. You really have to listen and learn, first of all, see if it's for you. Another way you can get started after you do that is volunteer to read for the blind. This is an unpaid work, but just to get experience reading for hours and hours on end to read for the blind. And sometimes you get a few hours in and you say, wow, this is enough. I can't imagine doing this 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. So there's a couple companies that we list in this presentation, Learning Ally and the Jewish Guild for the Blind are just two examples of places where you can volunteer to read and get some experience there. The next step up, if you want to earn a little money, is work for the NLS, the National Library Service for the Blind. It's part of the Library of Congress, and a lot of actors get their start here. The rates they pay are, it's non-union work. The rates aren't that high, but it's, again, a good place to get experience, and you get a couple books under your belt, and then you can talk to some of the larger publishers and get work from them, because there you have experience and you have something that you can send them. Next, you want to know who the publishers are, who's putting out audiobooks, who's putting out commercial audiobooks, I should say, and understand the genres that each of them work in. There's some that focus on mystery or science fiction, literary fiction, or business books. Just kind of get to know who they are and if they're recording the audiobooks themselves, or are they hiring out freelance producers who are then hiring you as the actor to record, and then they submit that to the publisher. So understanding the industry, which is one of the things we'll get to in a second, that's very important. And then another option is to audition for projects on the website acx.com, and at any given time there's literally thousands of projects that you can audition for on ACX, and you submit your audition digitally, so as opposed to physically show up to a studio and audition for a producer. Sorry. Going to skip this one where we talk about the demo, because I really want Scott and Pat and Hillary to focus more on what you need to do to prepare a demo. But one of the most basic things I'll say is, if you're applying for an audiobook gig, do not submit like your short form reel. We don't want to hear a radio spot or a TV spot. It has little to nothing to do with audiobook narration, so definitely don't do it. If you take one thing away from this slide, please do not submit that. If you have to perform an audiobook from scratch, if you've never done an audiobook before, record something new, record a public domain book or a famous book, it doesn't matter. Just a producer wants to hear your audiobook work. As I said, we'll focus on that more a little bit. Who are the companies producing audiobooks? These are people you want to know. So there's 6 major print publishers called the Big Six. Each of them has an audiobook division in-house that produces audiobooks. And again, some of them produce some of their books in-house and then will outsource some of their projects to producers. A lot of producers work freelance here in LA for these Big Six. It's Hachette, HarperCollins, Macmillan, Penguin, Random House, and Simon & Schuster. And then there's audio-only publishers who each of them put out a lot of audiobooks, probably in the hundreds each year, but you probably never heard of if you haven't worked in audiobooks. People like AudioGo, Blackstone, Brilliance, Highbridge, Recorded Books, and Tantor. I put Audible there as well. Audible is also a publisher of audiobooks, and we're the largest publisher of audiobooks, as a matter of fact. So ACX, just a show of hands, how many people have heard of the Audiobook Creation Exchange, ACX? Okay, so about a little more than half of you. So we launched this in May of 2011 as basically, we needed more audiobooks in Audible's store. So as I said, we're a retailer. We had a lot of customers who were almost like running out of audiobooks that they wanted to listen to in certain genres. And we said, we've run out of capacity at our studios. Some of our studio partners have run out of capacity. How are we going to make more audiobooks? And we devised this way that we would create an online marketplace where actors in recording studios on one side can come in, almost like a online matchmaking dating service. You come in on one side, and then the other side coming in are the publishers and the authors, whoever owns the audio rights, saying, I want this book made in audio. And the two parties then can meet up and make an audiobook. So you, as the actor, set up a profile. You can look around for books that seem interesting to you and audition for them and submit through the website an audition, usually 1 to 3 pages of the text of the book. And then these authors or these publishers can hear an actor reading their words and decide to hire you based on your performance of their work, not just something, not just a performance that you had done for another book, but reading their words. So it's proven to be quite popular. In 2012, we just actually, ACX produced 10 times as many audiobooks as we had the year before. So we're growing like gangbusters. It's really become one of the main ways for audiobooks to be created these days. So another nice feature of ACX is when you're auditioning, you can choose how you get paid. And there's 2 basic ways that you get paid. You can either do what's called a pay-for-production deal, which means that you're getting paid a per finished hour rate for the narration that you do, and some books are put up that way. Other publishers and authors put up deals as we call a royalty share. So they're basically saying, I'm not willing to pay money up front for this performance, but I'll split all my revenue from this audiobook with you 50-50. So you become basically you're an entrepreneur here. You're almost like an audiobook publisher. You're putting in sweat equity just like the author put in their sweat equity writing this book. And you're going to produce it and sell it on Audible, and you get to keep half of all the monies. And the money that you can make this way is not only from royalties, but there's additional ways that you can earn money through what we call a bounty system, whereby if that audiobook is among the first 3 purchases by a new Audible listener member, we throw in addition to your royalties, an extra $25. So you would split that with the author. So it's an extra $12.50 per sale. So we find that a lot of actors actually end up making as much or more money from these bonus bounties than they even do from the royalties. And it's especially effective if you are if you have a good social media following, or the author does, and they're really promoting the audiobook to people who are not already Audible members. So not relying on Audible to feature the book, and not relying on people just to find it, but really promoting it yourself. So it's kind of the way that the industry is going is self-promotion, social media, promoting through Twitter and Facebook, and these have proven extremely effective. So probably some of you in this room have already done one of these royalty share deals. And ACX, I say, we're always here to help. Literally every page of our website has our 888 toll-free number. We have a staff that can answer any questions about, should I choose this book or that book to audition for, or technical questions. How should I set up my home studio? I'm getting some noise, or the author rejected my first draft, what should I do, how should I re-record it, and you know, how can you help us mediate? I mean, we'll answer any questions, we'll help you through the process. So, working with SAG-AFTRA, congratulations on the merger, by the way. We used to work mostly with AFTRA, and now we get to work with SAG-AFTRA. So it's more access to more actors, which is perfect. So we have new rates that just started on January 1st, 2013 for Audible Studios. And this is not ACX, I'll get to that in a second. So the rates that we pay start at $155 per finished hour. And everyone should soon be familiar with this lexicon, per finished hour. It means the number of finished hours in the book, basically. So usually it takes about 2 hours in the studio that then get edited down and become 1 finished hour of audio, and that includes your kind of breaks and you know, food and bathroom breaks and retakes and things like that. But it's about a 2-to-1 ratio for most performers. So what we end up paying out on is just what it ends up being per finished out in the, you know, finished hours. So $155 is the starting rate, and then it goes up to $225 per finished hour for actors with more experience. So basically, like to hit the $225 rate, for example, you have to kind of have done a lot of audiobooks, at least 60 or more. So most actors in this room would probably be at the $155 rate, some at the middle to $210 rate. We also launched something in the middle of last year, which is very innovative, where we hire actors instead of just on a piecemeal basis for 1 book or 2 books. Audible Studios will hire you for a 13-week contract. So basically a quarter of a year, 3 months, you'll be working on audiobooks. And I say it's full-time, but really if you need to, if you have time during those 13 weeks, you can go on auditions, you can take other work. There's a number of kind of built-in vacation days if you want to go off on vacation or need sick days or things like that. But basically your commitment would, if you're hired for one of these, is to deliver about 15 finished hours per week. So that would mean you're probably in your home, and they'd be recorded in a home studio. So A, it requires that you have a home studio, and B, it requires that you would record yourself using Pro Tools or some other basic software and deliver us a punch record. And 3, you deliver about 15 finished hours, and we're pretty lenient with that. We have 30, I think it's 32 actors we've hired so far this way, and each of them, you know, a lot of times you start out delivering fewer and building up to 15 hours, and we're very lenient about that as long as we feel like you're going to get to the point where you can deliver us 15 finished hours. So that's just one of the many kind of innovative things we're doing at Audible, and hopefully some of you will get work that way. And then on top of whatever the payment I just mentioned, we pay 12% into your SAG-AFTRA kind of pension and health fund on top of those rates, and Audible pays that. We also have an arrangement for ACX with SAG-AFTRA, whereby we've set up some minimum rates that you have to earn on ACX on the website in order to be counted towards your pension and health fund. And those rates are $225 per finished hour is the minimum you need to earn on one of those pay-for-production deals. And then if you decide to do a royalty share deal, some of them come with a bonus payment, and I don't want to get too deep into the details, but certain work we really want them in these titles in our store. And so even though they're royalty share deals, we want to make sure that a lot of actors audition for them so they get made. So Audible throws in an extra $100 or more per finished hour. So you get this $100 per finished hour. Let's say it's a 10-hour book. You're going to get a $1,000 check from Audible, and then you're going to also get 50% of all the earnings from that, of the profits from that audiobook. So when you go on ACX, you'll see some books have a little kind of green flag on them that says stipend, and that means that it is stipend eligible. And then if you take a royalty share deal for that, Audible will also pay into your pension and health for those. So without further ado, let's focus on the meat of the presentation today. I'll call up Scott Brick, Hillary Huber, and Pat Fraley, who are 3 audiobook experts, actors, trainers, who we can learn a lot from. Welcome, guys.
Don't sit on the mic.
So what we're going to do is we'll talk for a couple minutes, and what we really want to encourage are questions from the audience. So we're going to be handed some pieces of paper, apparently, and pick a few questions there. And we're also going to call a number of you up from the audience to perform a little audiobook section, and we'll use that kind of as a jumping off point for discussion about the craft of audiobook
No
narration. Yeah, so think about if you want to be one of those people who's called up, and you can, I believe some of you were emailed out scripts for an eventual Audible audition, so you can use that, or what actually might be even more fun is Pat has brought a couple short scripts based on different kind of character types. So in a few minutes I'll call out, say, if you were, elderly female with a southern accent, come up and try this out. So we'll have some fun with that as well.
They're easy. They're easy.
Yeah.
You won't have to pronounce 15-syllable words.
So why don't we start just
Maybe.
before we start doing that, start maybe on the left with Scott about your audiobook experience, who you are, and maybe one or two tips that you want to make sure you get across this
Well,
evening.
I'll handle the introduction. Scott's the Brad Pitt of audiobooks. He's our star. He's one of those luminaries that breathes rarefied air. And in the country, there's just no one better. There's people that are different. But what, 500, 600 books?
600.
Wow, yeah. But who's counting?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that's as far as it goes, Sonny. The rest is up to you.
I appreciate you. I started doing audiobooks in 1999. And I tried for about 10 years to get into the industry, and I just didn't know how, because I was relying on my agent. And your agent isn't always going to know when this work comes up. They don't advertise in the breakdowns. Well, they do now, but they didn't back then. I should point out she was my old agent. Bless her heart, she just didn't know how, because it's not the entertainment industry. It's the publishing industry. They just hire entertainers. So that was the first thing I kind of had to wrap my brain around when I got my first job. But it's the best work I've ever had. I mean, I ran into, oh God, no, I'm blanking on his name. He was in Jackie Brown, Robert Forster, thank you. He was nominated for Jackie Brown, right? And I run into him up at Runyon Canyon. I was hiking. And I always loved his work, so I said, Mr. Forster, I'm Scott Brick, I'm an audiobook narrator, and that's about as far as I got. He goes, oh, you do this professionally? Holy crap, I love that work. I said, really? I mean, not that he wouldn't, but, the guy's an Oscar nominee, and he's telling me, he goes, you do this all the time? I said, yeah. He goes, God, I envy you. All right, again, he's an Oscar nominee, so I'm going, but he said what he loved about the work was in between the gigs, TV, film, whatever. He gets to keep his chops up. He gets to do, he gets to practice his craft, and he uses every skill he's ever learned when doing audiobooks. When I was at college, I went to UCLA, and I remember there was a woman who was bemoaning the fact that she was never going to get to play Hamlet, no matter what she learned. Unless it was an all-woman production, she was never going to get to play this role. But you can if you're doing an audiobook. You play the men and the women. You play everything. And you really, I'd say if I was going to break this down into a tip, put everything that everything that you have in your arsenal. All the skills you have as an actor, you utilize them in audiobooks. One of the tips I always tell people, the three of us, we teach classes together, and I always try to leave everybody with a little bit of advice, and I always say, I always tell people to tell jokes, because I can't tell you, I spent my youth telling jokes, and none of them I could tell here. But I can't tell you how many times a character in a book has been, the line has been, the guy walks into a bar. Right, now, you'll notice that my voice sounded different there than it does in everyday speech. It's just that little presentational quality, that little pause before you begin. There's a ritual, a time-honored ritual to telling a joke. And if you can tell a joke, I think it really helps you in other ways, not just when you're telling a joke in the text, but a joke has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you can get from one to the next to the last, if you can do it in the micro version, you can do it in the macro version. Other than that, I always try to, we're going to talk about preparing the text, and that's very important, doing the research. We'll get into that.
But the one thing I always try to stress to people is to also prepare yourself, prepare your mood, just prepare who you are and how you feel before you go into the studio. And what I mean by that is, as an illustration, I was doing Stir of Echoes by Richard Matheson. Great horror novel, and it was made into a Kevin Bacon film about 10 years ago. And it's a ghost story. And I had to record this book. Now, I hadn't read it since college. And I thought, well, I should reread it ahead of time. I thought, no, I want to discover it as I'm doing it. I knew the story, and I'd watched the film. And as I watched the film to remind myself of the story, I remembered how scary it is. And so I decided I would do a little experiment. I was recording this in my home studio. I live in a big old 1930s, wooden floors, very echoey kind of, cavernous home. Right before I started recording, this was this one evening, after it had gotten dark, I put on The Shining. And I scared the shit out of myself. Pardon my French. I scared the crap out of myself. And then I went downstairs at about midnight and started recording, alone in my house. And then after I got, several hours worth done, slept in late, and the next day, when it got dark, I played The Ring. And then I went in to record. And I say, that's the kind of thing I mean by preparing your mood, preparing who you are and how you feel before you go into the studio, especially when you're working on a genre that's outside of, everyday, traditional, contemporary fiction.
Tell them about preparing for What Makes Buddy Run. I love that. But give them a little taste of the opening of the book.
What Makes Sammy Run is the great American novel. It was written by Bud Schulberg, the guy who wrote On the Waterfront, about 1940 or 1941. And the novel begins, it's so great. It starts off, he couldn't have been much older than 16 years old the first time I met him. Short, sharp, and quick. Sammy Glick. Used to run copy for me. Always ran. Always looked thirsty. Good morning, Mr. Mannheim, he said to me the first time we met. I'm the new office boy, but I ain't going to be an office boy long. Don't say ain't, I said. You'll be an office boy forever. Now, well, yeah. There's only so much room up here, Pat. It was, as you can see, it's a cadence and a rhythm and a speed to the speech that we don't have in American culture today. We really only had it in films. I mean, His Girl Friday, they did it that fast because the script was about 20 pages too long, and they said, well, if you hurry, we can get through it. It's a true story. It's true. But nevertheless, we think of that delivery with stuff that's written in that period. Well, I love that period, but I don't live my life in that rhythm. So what I did is I was recording it out in Woodland Hills at Random House, at their studio out there, and I had about a half an hour commute, 25 minutes. So I collect old radio shows. I went and I got Howard Duff starring as Sam Spade, The Adventures of Sam Spade on radio. And every day on my way there, I would hear that rhythm, and it just became embedded in my consciousness. And then as I was coming home, I would do the same thing. It's almost like you got to warm up before you exercise, but then you got to warm down. I wanted to really, truly embed it in my hearing, because in my head, if I could hear it in my head, Dan Musselman at Random House always says, if you can hear it in your head, the listener will hear it in their ear. And nobody's going to listen to either one of those books and think, boy, it sounds like he watched The Ring the night before. Or, God, I bet he listened to radio shows on his way into the studio that day. But audiobooks is a medium where subtlety sells. So, anyway, take that for what it's worth. Pat, on to you.
Okay, well, now I'll use my mic. Thank you very much, though. But don't hold it down there like that. It makes me nervous. Well, this is my 40th year as a performer and teacher of voice, and 39 years in the union. And so, I hope I can shuffle to the fridge for tapioca pudding.
Legendary.
Audiobooks is not rocket surgery. It's not doing Othello at the Royal Court. That's why it doesn't pay so much. They're not going to make much money off it anyway. It's a nickel and dime thing, like going, they need a lot of inventory to make money. But here's what I think of it. It's like somebody wants you to do a play, and they go, "Hello, I'm glad you could come here. We want you to do our little play. Actually, it's a quite long play. It's 10 hours long. And it's a monologue, actually. But here's the good news. You won't have to work with Roseanne Barr. You're going to do all the parts. Now, you don't have to come to the theater. You don't have to put on makeup. There's no lights. There's no costume. Matter of fact, we don't want you to move around. You can sit down. In fact, why don't you do it at home in your pajamas? And we'll pay you the same amount of money as we pay people for an interactive contract or perhaps an ADR or animation. And you won't be traveling about and auditioning either. Right? And so it's so agreeable. I know that at one point I spent 2 or 3 months in the studio doing Huck Finn, and I never missed an audition or a job. I could weave in and out, and it became part of the fabric of being a performer because, you know, we have to do so much to make things work or be available for it. And I've taught with Scott for 6 years, and I think 10 with Hillary, and they do more. I teach it, and I have a reading disorder, so it's tough for me to do audiobooks, but I enjoy teaching it and producing them, and it's about 20 years that I've been involved with audiobooks. And if I would tell you one thing, I'd say that it's you telling stories. It's no big deal. They don't want you to... The Scotsman walked in the door and said, "Oh, it's a great little newspaper, eh?" You know, don't... Because you're in your car, you're driving, go, "Oh, a little too much Scottish for me." They want a taste, you know. The Scotsman walked through the door and said, "Oh, it's a great London newspaper." You know, it's nothing to have fear of. It's quite agreeable. The only thing you have to do is the first thing you do is you want to do a book, and it could be on the edge of your bed, and you can contribute it to the local elementary school, but you got to know what that journey is, because it's a marathon, and some people. Our friend Vanessa Marshall goes, "That's not going to happen. I'm not going to be in a closet for 3 days." So, but others find it very agreeable. Hillary once told me that she said, "You know, the great thing is when you're finished, you've got that on your shelf and it's all you. It's just something that you can own." And in this world of performance, certainly here in Los Angeles, it's so difficult and daunting to collaborate with so many people. Well, this is it. You know, being a producer as an audiobook narrator is making sure that you show up sober. That's it. And then you're fine. And the last thing before I introduce my wonderful, talented friend Hillary Huber is that she once said, what you need to do is find out where the welcome mat is out for you. And if you have a lurking Southern accent that you've tried your whole career to try to hide, now you're an expert. And it's true. If you're of age, nobody wants to hear Justin Timberlake do of the Grapes of Wrath. Well, you do. Well,
Yeah,
you told me
because he
that.
brings the sexy.
Yeah. That's right. Wherever you find a guy in a boxcar, I'll be there. No.
You sounded just like him.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day that if Christopher Walken got Dickens, and would go, "It's the best of times." Not going to happen. But I do want to say one thing. When he mentioned subtlety, which I'm apparently incapable of, but what he said was great is because, I lost it. It was
We're talking about something I
Too
said that
many
was
thoughts
great.
out at once.
I know. I'm too excited. Let me just
He
introduce.
needs to calm down.
I'll remember it, and it'll be amusing. Here's my wonderful friend Hillary Huber, who is in the country or North America is one of the supreme readers, and she's one of the only women that can do like men, because she has that witchy voice. You'll hear it. She can do men like better than men. So she's spooky good. Here she is.
I entered this world from the world of commercial voiceover, which I'm sure a lot of you are involved in. And I'd been doing commercial voiceover for too long. And there's ageism in commercial voiceover, and the demographic is what, 25 to 40, I think is the main commercial demographic. And frankly, I was aged out of that demographic when I was 18. I sounded like this. And I love that work. I'm grateful for it. It pays my mortgage. But I really don't care if I do another 7-Eleven commercial. It's vapid and it goes off into the ether and then it's gone. So what Pat was talking about, something on the shelf that you've done, I have a pride in being able to record a whole book. It's an incredible accomplishment, and I feel like I'm leaving something beautiful behind on this earth, providing it's not vampire porn, which I leave a lot of behind on this earth as well. But there's some good ones in there too, propping up my bookshelf. I put them in the front. But what I think is super important to point out is I think that audiobook narration right now is probably the most encouraging area of performance that is available to certainly every one of us in this room. Steven Spielberg is probably not going to hire us to be in this film. Even getting into the commercial voiceover world and certainly animation is hard. There are a lot of doors to knock down. But every single one of you has the ability to record a book, literally within the next couple months, if not sooner. As Pat, or as I said also, there's no ageism, there's no racism. They need everybody. We need young people, old people, black people, white people, every ethnicity. Everything goes. And you can work, I mean, till you can't read anymore, I suspect, right? Or can't stumble your way into the booth.
And I'll add too, while just on that subject, the producers within the audiobook field are very friendly, very chummy with one another. If someone from publisher A likes you, they're going to tell their friends from the other publishers about them. So we'll have someone come in, audition at Audible, and we maybe don't have a project for them, but they're really good. We'll call up Hachette and say, wow, I just met this great actor. So there's a lot of, if you're good, we'll tell everybody.
Yeah. No, it's true. Oh, that's happened to me. I always say audiobooks is very incestuous in a good way. It's true. And there are companies like Recorded Books or Blackstone or Brilliance, because they're an audio-only company. They don't have a print division. Basically, they're buying the rights to certain books from other publishers. So quite often, you'll do what they call a co-pub. It means just two publishers are working on it. I work for Blackstone, and it winds up going to Simon & Schuster. So on the same book, you find yourself working for two different publishers. And I didn't even know about this. I was an absolute neophyte in the industry. I worked for Books on Tape. They were bought by Random House. But this book was for Time Warner. And suddenly the head of the audio department at Time Warner calls me one day and goes, oh yeah, you did that Nelson DeMille book for us. And I thought, no, I didn't. But thank God I was smart enough to not say anything and shut my mouth. And she started hiring me directly. So, I mean, that happens a lot. It's the best part of this industry.
And what else is encouraging is you don't need an agent. I think it's probably one of the only areas of performance where that's the case also. What you need is chutzpah and the ability to go out there and knock on some doors and market yourself. And you can get through those doors. They open. These guys need you. Especially these guys need you, publishing 10 times more this year than they did last year. There is a lot of work out there, and they need warm bodies in their studios.
And let me just augment that. This is the first time in my 40 years that I've ever seen a truly demand-driven market. Not because there's not enough people that do character voices for cartoons. That happened in the 80s. This is because they don't have enough performers to create the grassroots desire and need for audiobooks. The only time I've ever read about it being like this is where in 1918, when they were pulling people in Hollywood Boulevard off the street because they look good for their movies. Literally. It's a huge amount of work. And some of our most modest students, and we teach and do demos on a regular basis, we have events, modest students, I'm going, gee, really? You got a book deal? Great. And the good news is you can, really? But the thing about it is this is one of those rare situations where you can learn on-job training. Experience literally will teach you, because they don't listen to that. No one listens to each other's books. So you can start with a modest publisher, even getting a percentage deal, or perhaps very modest money, not making money, and then work up. It's unusual.
I'll take a couple questions from the audience now before we call a few people up. A few people asked us, do you need to have a home studio? Is it a requirement for audiobook to be an audiobook narrator? I'll give a quick answer. Maybe you guys want to expand. The answer is no, you don't need to, but it expands the opportunities available to you. So if you know, I always say you should be entrepreneurial about it. If it doubles, if not triples, the opportunities for you if you do get a home studio, because then you can do work on ACX a lot easier, and even work for some publishers, because some publishers, if they don't have studios or if they're over capacity, they'll look for actors that have a home studio, and certainly we do that all the time at Audible. I would warn you against building a home studio until you've done probably 2, 3, 4 books, if not more, because you don't want to invest all that money and then find out that either people don't want to hire you, or you don't like the work. So I would say you want your first jobs to be for a publisher, working with an engineer and director helping you out for your first few projects, before you go into performing on your own. I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
I
That's
think,
well
yeah,
said.
Yeah, absolutely. You shouldn't feel the financial burden, because a studio can be $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, I mean, however advanced you want to get. You shouldn't feel like you have to spend that if you don't know the work is waiting for you. But when you find yourself getting calls from Audible a lot, Mike Charzik at Audible, if he, at some point they're going to put the bug in your ear. They're going to say, hey, so I know you don't have a home studio. You ever think about one? Read. That's a hint. Take the hint and look into it, because you also want to talk to the publishers as you're putting your studio together. First of all, if you're like me, you got no clue. I had absolutely no idea how to build a home studio. I went to the experts. But if you go to the publishers and tell them that you're thinking about doing it, there might be some aid that they can give you, even if it's simple advice, which is going to be invaluable. Or, Tantor, who just signed with SAG-AFTRA, just signed a contract, God bless him. They had, or they used to have, I know last year, I don't know if they're still running it, but they had this program where if you wanted to build a home studio, you could buy a Whisper booth through them and get 10% off the price. And then they would basically take it out of your pay over the next couple of books. So, don't go out and indulge in, a mega several $1,000 studio without knowing that the work is there. But if the work starts piling up, look into it, because it will, your productivity can skyrocket.
Hey, Casey just brought a shirt for you. You want to go get it while we field a couple
I
questions?
had a wardrobe malfunction. My dad always used to tell me, Scott, make sure you learn how to handle your liquor. I really should have learned how to handle salad dressing. Excuse me.
Here, give me that. Yeah.
Some other questions came in about how do men handle performing women's voices and women handle performing men's voices.
Well, when you do
Lizards performing cows'
I'm really good at this
voices,
because I
you have
do. I just watch Scott. That's all I do is I watch Scott and teach it. But there's a couple things about it. First of all, you don't want to play gender. You want to play the attitude. No one wants to hear a falsetto for a girl. A man doing that. In fact, I got to tell you, Ed Asner was once in a book. He's a friend of mine, my mentor for my whole career. And he came over to he'd done a book called Suspect, and he actually did this kind of thing, which, imagine Ed Asner, it's really creepy. So every so often he'd come over, and Renee'd be out of the den, and I'd go, Ed, do a little of that Suspect girl for me. I can't tell you what to say, but you shut up, It's really creepy. What you want to do is play the attitude. But what Scott has a generalization that I think is very handy as a skill. Women are more engaged in the world, and men are more demonstrative. So a man, if the line is, I think we'll go downtown, a man will go, I think we'll go downtown. A woman will go, I think we'll go downtown. You see the shift? It's a little more engaged. And that's something that Scott does real well. He's really well at changing. Now, Hillary is capable of doing men. So the
Vampires.
Yeah, the middle management rule is don't go too far because you'll break the suspension of disbelief. Right? But if you can do it, then do it. And Hillary can do like bikers. And so, yeah, you go farther. But, when women generally do men, they'll go like this, right? And men will kind of be effeminate. But and also they'll raise their pitch. What Scott does is puts a little air underneath when he delivers a female, just a little bit more air going through, and then follow that idea of more engagement than men, just generally. The trick I do is to make the woman lower than the man. I go, she walked in the room she had legs that went all the way up and down again. Or no, she walked in the room and she had legs that went all the way up and down again. I said, where have you been all my life, sweetheart? She said, in the back seat with your older brother. I said, who do you think you are? Who do I have to be? So I don't go higher for women. That way it doesn't get creepy.
It was a little creepy.
It still was, yeah. But the thing is, if you're a woman and you try to make your voice down there like this, you know what the listener's going to be able to hear? They're going to hear your throat doing this. And all that matters in audiobooks is, does the listener know who's speaking at all times? Can they sort the characters out? It really helps when you've only got two people in the scene, because really that's all you need to do is, like Pat was saying, what I do, it's going up at the end of women's sentences and down at the men's. It's, why won't you talk to me? I don't feel like talking. Tell me how you feel. I feel like not talking. I'm not doing anything crazy with my voice. There's a little breath in there. It's aspirating just a little bit, but not too much. And yet, if the listener knows who's talking, then, enough.
It makes me think about another thing I'd like to bring up, which is just the book, in regards to how far you go and how large you are. You really need to pay attention to the book and what the author's intent is with that particular book. And that's your primary goal, is to fulfill the author's intent. They spent a lot of time writing this book, and it's your job to make it sound the way they heard it in their head to the best of your ability, not knowing what went on in their head. But so some books, like Pat's performance of Huck Finn, which is the best-selling Huck Finn out there, it's huge. It should be huge. It's Mark Twain. He goes for it with these characters. But a smaller, more contemporary chick lit piece maybe isn't going to be that big. It's going to be more emotion-based and not character-based. So there are no rules, I guess is what I'm saying. Sometimes you're subtle, sometimes you're large. You really have to pay attention to the book, and you have to read the book. That's usually a question that's in the pile.
Yeah.
Do you read the book first?
Yeah, you got to do that.
Usually.
By the way, the major categories, and if you can do them, you want to be in the major categories: mystery, suspense, thriller, contemporary fiction. Nonfiction, you need to have a little bit of authority generally in your voice, just the way you sound, but go for the fiction, because look, we got a foot up being actors. We know about initiation response. We know about acting, and that's where you have a foot up from other people. We know about acting and how characters affect each other. So go for the throat. Go for the most popular and needful genre to fill, contemporary fiction generally.
Let's talk about how you prepare for an audiobook read. There's some questions came in about that. Someone said, do you just do a 500-page cold read?
You read the book.
Yeah, hopefully not. Scott maybe will tell you something different, but he's also performed 600
No,
books.
I'll tell you what
for
we
most
tell
people.
when we go to colleges and people are gullible. Whenever they say, "So, how many times do you read the book before you record it?" We say, "Oh, as many times as it take to memorize it." just to see the look on their face. No, you read it once. Read it once, and there are certain visual aids that you can use, whether you're working from actual pages or whether you're working from an iPad and reading off of a PDF. Both, you can highlight it with color, whether it's colored pens, highlighter pens, or if you use like iAnnotate on an iPad, you can highlight the dialogue in certain colors, and it's a color coordination thing that you assign various colors to various characters. Blue for the men, pink for the women, whatever, yellow for the bad guy. However you want to do it. You get like 6 or 8, primary colors, the main characters in the book. And that way, you don't have to be reading very far ahead because you're seeing those two colors coming up. You see it in your peripheral vision. Oh, that's right. It's the seduction scene. Oh, that's right. It's the assassination scene. Whatever it is. So you can do that. You can write your notes that way. And whoever is producing the book, sometimes that's you. Sometimes, hopefully, you're working with an actual producer. They're going to look up all the words to make sure that anything, so you don't say indefatigable. Actually, it's indefatigable. I swear to God, I was watching somebody one time, and it was somebody on the news, and she said, "Boy, I wonder what went Ari." And I thought, wow, I think you went to college, but you just, you'll have a little guide, whoever the producer is, you or whomever you're working with, are going to have a pronunciation guide. I do the Dune series, 18 books. Thank you. And in the first book alone, there was 598 words and phrases that appear in no language on earth, completely made up by Frank Herbert.
That way you can't be wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's only 3 people on earth who speak Jacobsa, the 2 authors, and me. But, I have to have this glossary, which has grown to over 2,000, I think 2,100 words by now. And I've got it all alphabetized. Everything's spelled out phonetically. I've got sound files from the original Dune, the 598. So if I look at the phonetics and I'm like, what was that again? I can hear myself say it. Now, you don't go to this trouble with every book. This is obviously, this is an extreme one end of the spectrum. But all of these little tools, a glossary, and I'll tell you what, if you work on a book and you never know if the author's going to write a sequel. And there's nothing worse than 2 years later you get called and said, hey, there's the sequel to, the Passage of the 12 or whatever, and you go, oh, right, yeah, crap, what were those voices? And you have no reference. You don't want to go
Then you have to listen to yourself.
There's nothing worse than listening to yourself. Okay, trust me, I don't do it. I don't recommend it for anybody. But, if you just jot down a few things, I know some people, I've tried it once or twice. Like I was saying earlier, if you can hear it in your head, they'll hear it in their ears. Sometimes people will, instead of doing an imitation of a certain actor, instead they'll just try to capture their cadence or their rhythm. I did it in a fantasy series with this group of beings that were supposed to be non-emotional, and I thought, well, those are Vulcans, and so I mean, come on, I'm never going to sound like Leonard Nimoy, but that cadence he had, you are my superior officer. You are also my friend. I have been and always shall be yours. I can do that till the cows come home. And probably nobody's going to really know unless I'm talking about Star Trek that I'm trying to hear Leonard Nimoy in my head. So I know people who do this for the entire book. They'll say, oh yeah, Robert Loggia, or Chris Christopherson, whomever it is, the more obscure the better. And they just think this is the archetype for that role. And it'll help them. I did a series and it was Joe Pesci. It was just, it was crazy and frenetic and drug-addled. That wasn't necessarily it, but I mean, the guy was literally, he was just like so spaced out on coke the whole time. I just kept thinking of Joe Pesci in the Lethal Weapon movies. Write those things down. Put them in your files. Keep a filing cabinet, because 2 years later, you're going to want to read that stuff.
Practically speaking, on research, you'll have to find out the pronunciation of certain things, and you'll be on your own. And Hillary and I produced several books, and so we kind of worked out how to do that. We found that calling the police is really good, not 911, because they know the pronunciation of streets. If you call the library, they'll give you the correct pronunciation.
For instance, if you're doing a book that takes place in Oregon or something, and you don't know how to say that town name, you call the local Oregon Police Department, and they'll help you out.
They're always open. Chamber of Commerce, when we had anything foreign, we'd call the consulate general. You just don't call the French consulate, because they're not. But most everybody that you deal with is kind of excited about helping you out. In fact, we did a book where Hillary was doing a herpetologist. Is that what you call it?
It's a snake scientist,
Okay,
not
snake
a
scientist.
herpes scientist.
But we called the LA Zoo, and there was one guy there that was that guy. And like daily, he'd go, hello, Hillary, what's new today? What do you need to know? And he became like her man at the zoo. But that's the way you go about getting research done and things. The other thing to do to prepare for a book is to look at the major themes. Google and read interviews with the author, if there are any. Read reviews, anything you can find. It's all helpful. I know that we were doing Season of the Snake, which is a book about a sexual predator that weaves into a town and does what he does and leaves. And I was reading an interview preparing to help Hillary get ready to do the book, and I read that the title of the book originally was Skin of the Snake, which is this idea that they leave the skin and it looks like a snake and just slither in, and that was such a great thing thematically to have in the back of your mind as you do a book. So those are things. The other thing that Hillary and I did producing is we always tried to get hold of the author. and we'd make a relationship with the author. Some people say, oh, don't do it, but we'd have dinner with them, we'd get them on the phone, because they know how to pronounce things we won't. And they also, we found them very engaging. In fact, one of them wanted Hillary to do all her books after we had that relationship. That was very handy.
I keep a notebook by my side when I'm doing my first read-through, and I write down every word that I don't know, or even think I don't know, and every character. And I just jot stuff down as it's revealed throughout the text. You don't know if that character is going to be a main character, you know, when they show up on page 5, or that'll be the end of them. But I jot down everything, things that other people say about them. It could be physical descriptions, or, I mean, heaven if you get an actual vocal description, but just any kind of character description, just to help you come up, you know, with an idea of what they're going to sound like. Your family's a really great place to mine, too. You all do imitations of everybody in your family, right? That's a great, great character source. But then I have those notes, and I can always refer back to them, like Scott was saying, which is handy.
Let's call a couple people up. Let's see, maybe
What we can do.
40 years, ladies and gentlemen, 40 years.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Is this on? We can have you up. We can look at a script and say we need somebody that's, you know, a mature female, or you can come up with a script if you've prepared something.
Why don't we start with maybe one?
I'll give
one,
you the script, by the way, before you come up so you can look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Why don't we call out a couple of those, and then while
Okay.
they're preparing, we'll take one man
got
and then
those
one woman.
scripts.
The
or
reason,
vice
the
versa.
reason we break it down like this is that it's something about the audiobook industry. It is very gender and ethnicity centric. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Tell them about the author's male.
Yeah.
They
if
will
the- if-
not, rarely will they take a female to do it, or vice versa. It happens,
Basically,
but rarely.
what it depends on is who's the main character. If a man writes a book about a woman, they'll get a woman to record it, traditionally. But, you know, white men write stories about white men. Black women write stories about black women. It's just the way it is. So that's basically who you turn to when you're going to, you know, when you need somebody. So that's why we say, you know, I one time lost a book because it was about a Vietnam vet, and I said I didn't sound old enough. I was like, thank God. Ordinarily, I get told I sound too old.
And most audiobooks are performed by one actor. Maybe a few percent of audiobooks, the publisher will hire multiple actors because they want to hear. Well, certainly short story collections they'll do that sometimes. And a classic example from a few years ago would be The Help, where they have 4 different actors performing each of kind of the 4 main characters. So each of the domestic help that they had, and it was a main woman, Skeeter.
From a
Yeah,
practical
so-
standpoint,
yeah,
I mean,
and it worked very well because it was a first-person narrative, so each one was was in
Yeah.
the first person, so they each had different
You should
voices.
listen to that, too, if you haven't.
Yeah, great
Those are great
audiobook.
projects. They're great projects to do
Really
because
fun.
quite often you get to work with other people. Sometimes you get to do scenes together, not all the time, but sometimes. But from a practical standpoint, as much fun as they are, I mean, I said earlier I've done 600 books. I've probably done about 20 of those. I've also only done 5 books by women.
excuse me, I need a mature female. Okay, up there, standing up. Yeah, just a sec here. Yeah, give her one. Sure. Yeah, sure. How about a African-American guy over 30? Okay, there you are. Between 30 and death. Come on down. Let's see here.
Here, hand it over
take that one.
hand it over.
How about a white guy that's about 50 or 40, and he knows about the East Coast?
Oh, me.
No, that's East Coasty kind of guy, can do a little bit of, is upper class. Yeah, and he's one of them's a drunk. Can you? Oh, of course, I recognize you. Sure.
Great. And so while the 3 of them prepare a little bit, let's call up one woman who's prepared one of the scripts that we sent out, either the what do we send out? Delicious, a Harlequin book, or the nonfiction book about the Earth.
know
Anyone
what?
want to volunteer?
You can take longer if they want. Do you want? Should we give them longer to prepare?
We'll probably just do the first page.
We'll cut you off.
Yeah.
You know what? I
Give them
just
a
want
few
you all to
minutes to
remember,
work
because this is nerve-wracking. I mean, to get up here and read in front of all of these people, as you are up here reading, what Pat always likes to say is, if you make a mistake, nobody in the audience is laughing at you. They're just saying, "Wow, thank God it's not me." It's an awkward thing to do, to get up and perform in front of a bunch of strangers. But you've all done this. You've all told somebody a story, and that's all we're doing. Everybody loves a story. It's the oldest art form there is. So if you can just tap into that feeling of telling somebody, either reading your kid a story or just telling a story across the breakfast table about what you did last night. That's all you're doing. You're telling a story. And maybe if you can keep that in your mind, it'll help dispel some of the nerves, you know? And we're all just want to hear a story, right? Everybody
I'm
wants
like
to
a
hear a
dad.
story.
Put that coat on your lap, honey.
So tell us a story. Maybe slate it first. Tell us who you are, what you're going to be reading, and begin when you're ready.
My name is Ty Brenneman, and I chose Life Ascending. It's the introduction and just the first two paragraphs.
Well, you just start reading. Here's what's going to happen. We teach so often together that what will happen is a lesson will unfold for all of us. You're sort of like our guinea pig. So you go along, and one of us is going to go, I got this one. Because we're so like-minded, because it's not a big, complex thing. If you go to a teacher that makes it complex, they want to hold the keys of the kingdom. It's reading aloud. Hello. Okay? So you just start off, and we'll say thank you, and the lesson will unfold.
And we're looking for something to teach. You know, that you could get up here and read beautifully, and we could say, thank you, that was great.
Yeah.
And down you go. But we want to find something that we can point out as a lesson, you know?
Yeah. Now, if you make a mistake, just go back to where you want to. That's the way you do it, to the top of the sentence and continue on. Just don't eat your own lunch and go, doggone it, because then you won't match, right? Because it's only process. It's not mistakes. You know, the world is mistake, 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 you're a failure, you're fired. Here it's like process, process. Ooh, I can live with that. That's what we do. It's a kinder and gentler part of the world as a performer, and certainly in audiobooks. Okay, when you're ready.
Set against the consuming blackness of space, the Earth is a beguiling blue-green ball. Barely 24 people have ever experienced the emotion of seeing our planet from the moon and beyond. Yet the fragile beauty of pictures they sent back home is engraved in the minds of a generation. Nothing compares. Petty human squabbles over borders and oil and creed vanish in the knowledge.
Okay, hold on just a
Yeah.
sec. This is a nonfiction piece,
Yeah.
I believe, right? One of them was a nonfiction piece. Here's something to keep in mind with nonfiction. That person spent a long time researching whatever this topic is, and it is incredibly dear to their heart for them to spend years researching and putting it down on a page. And I think that's an important thing to keep in the back of your mind, because if you can somehow absorb and marinate in the fact that this is the most important thing that this person
I get it.
has to tell you about, we tend to think nonfiction is a reporting. You're reporting something. It's not a story. You're not acting. But you're really still telling a story, and it's a really important, intimate one. So if you can try and find one person to kind of share this incredibly important information with, it'll create a more one-on-one relationship and an intimacy. And this is something that we will probably say to every single one of you guys: slow down.
Yeah, see, now what she gave before that will slow you down, because you're wanting to communicate. One of the important things is to think about their journey. No one curls up in front of the fire with an apple and a good audiobook. They're driving and Dustin's throwing up in the back seat, you know. They have a redundant job. They're listening while other things are happening. So bring them along, because if they're making a movie, if they like you, it's only because the soundtrack for their movie is good and they're following it. Once they stop following because I can't follow her, they're done. So take your time with it. Besides, the longer you take, the more money you make. Do you need any more motivation? But you sound really good. Now, don't drift into a narrator sound. I don't know you, but talk to me for a sec. Just say,
No, I think I totally agree with what
okay,
you're
so
saying.
where
It
you're
was a little
talking now
flat.
is a little less demure. So go with you, because you are perfectly cast for everything you do. That's how you go about this. You don't adjust unless you absolutely have to. So do a little more of your voice. It'll help you connect with your thinking and feeling on your choices, and that's all you got. This is a railroad, no budget. You go with how you would think and feel and how the characters would think and feel as you. That's where you go.
And
Okay.
I always try to also look for moments where an author is injecting something that isn't necessary, but it's very evocative. And there's that great two-word line, "Nothing compares." I think it's just something like that. It's essentially it's a judgment. The author is sharing technical information, then all of a sudden they say nothing compares, and you can have like this nice, whether it's not fast or slow or clipped or whatever your cadence is as you're delivering the information. When you get to the two words, that little injection there, that little judgment, nothing compares. Make that personal. Just like if you're telling somebody, nothing compares. You don't want to go all the way and go, nothing compares. I mean, you don't want to take them out of the story.
Yeah.
But this is where the author is telling you, this is cool. And they have a lot of natural enthusiasm for what they're doing. Like, as Hillary says, you want to share that enthusiasm. And so moments like that are perfect for that.
Now, can we pick on you anymore? Can we give you more notes and make you follow?
Absolutely.
I'll take that, honey. There you go.
Thanks.
All right.
Just pick up.
No, just
Read
go
more?
for the tops and
Okay.
take those, try to put those notes in your head and take your time.
Okay. Set against the consuming blackness of space, the Earth is a beguiling blue-green ball. Barely 24 people have ever experienced the emotion of seeing our planet from the moon and beyond. Yet the fragile beauty of the pictures they sent back home is engraved in the minds of a generation. Nothing compares. Petty human squabbles over borders and oil and creed.
Yeah, you can even go slower because here's what I was thinking. It's like when you have a word processing and you go the other day and it goes, the other day. We're sitting here and this is really purple, wonderful language. Think of the end of the sentence as you finish it. We're going, okay.
I see a blue ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, they're building their pictures. So give us a chance to go, I'm with you. All right,
okay.
Next. Yeah, go ahead.
That's good advice.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Right.
I'm the Walking Dead, but I have a little wisdom.
Go ahead.
Petty human squabbles over borders and oil. Okay. Petty human
No,
squabbles.
No, take it when you take a pickup. Take it easy. Yeah, don't jump in. It's not like theater. It's
Okay.
fine. Take your time to go back in.
Petty human squabbles over borders and oil and creed vanish in the knowledge that this living marble surrounded by infinite emptiness is our shared home, and more, a home we share with and owe to the most wonderful inventions of life. Life itself transformed our planet from the battered and fiery rock that once orbited a young star to the living beacon that is our world seen from space. Life itself turned our planet blue and green as tiny photosynthetic bacteria cleansed the oceans of air and sea and filled them with oxygen. Powered.
Yeah, that's much better. Now you're on track.
Okay.
So it's just
feel?
Actually, that's how I read it when I read it and practice it, and then when you revisit
Well,
it.
Here and you're like,
right.
let me read through and get out of here.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a
I don't know,
natural
I'm
act.
nervous. It just didn't come out right.
Right. Well, that's
like I read
perception of
before.
reality. That's the good news about doing this is by the time you get a quarter into a book, you get better and better and better. But yeah, that was very good. Give her a hand.
And what was the reason for this?
I am so glad that came up when she said that's the way that she had thought of it. There's a story I always tell. My girlfriend auditioned for an audiobook, and I'm so glad she's not here because she loves it when I tell this story. She was auditioning for Audible, and she asked me the night before. She said, "Could I listen? Could I listen to her? Read the signs?" I said, "Sure." And when she got done, I told her the truth. Surprised we're still together. But what I told her was, I said, that was a good read. but if I was hiring somebody for this book, I wouldn't pick you. And she said, why? And I said, because I know you, and I know how much personality you have, and yet I didn't hear any of it in the read. And she said something that this reminded me of when this just came up. She said, I was reading the book the way I thought an audiobook narrator should sound. And that's the main mistake people make when they first get into the studio. Sound how you sound.
And that's why I did say at the very beginning, listen to a lot of audiobooks, and you'll realize that they don't sound like maybe you have pictured in your head audiobook sound. Or actually, one of the questions that came up was, I used to listen to audiobooks, and I didn't like the sound of them, and I didn't like the acting. And the audiobook acting in general has changed in the last 20 years. It's become a lot more natural. People are telling stories through, it's more than just reading the author's words, but people aren't going over the top maybe as much as they used to. And just the sound of an audiobook today is very different. And we know as a retailer, if there's a classic book, a lot of times publishers are re-recording them now based on what customers are expecting today. So definitely listen and be your natural self. As we said earlier, you're chosen for an audiobook. If you win a project on ACX, or if a publisher hires you or a producer hires you, they hired you. They didn't hire something they thought you could be. They hired you.
Not to mention, you're in there for a long time, and it's hard to sustain a put-on voice for 10, 15 hours, but you've been sustaining yourself your whole life.
There's a
Right?
reason you got cast, and the casting is 80% of the work. I mean, I do Nelson DeMille books. He's a New York anti-terrorism former detective. And the guy who cast me, Dan Musselman at Random House, he said, I got this book about a real New York wise-ass. I thought of you. And it's true, I am sarcastic. If sarcasm was a foreign language, I'm fluent. But that's the reason that he cast me to do that book. Because that has to come out in the read. If it doesn't, you're doing yourself, you're doing the project, and you're doing the listener a disservice. So be in whatever you read.
Let's have that drunk in here. Oh, I'm sorry. You're playing a drunk. Yeah, oh, yeah. Good. What's your name?
Julian.
How's that mic for? Is that going to be okay? You want me to lift it?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Casey, you want maybe a little higher. Casey, get him. My intern. Yes, Raul. Now, what's your name?
Julian.
Uncle, still Julian?
Still Julian.
Right. And what's your interest in audiobooks? Have you done them
well,
before? or-
I've been practicing. I like doing characters, actually, a lot, and I'm good with accents and things like
Well,
that.
that's excellent.
So,
Those are two great skills for contemporary
I like to
fiction.
talk, like this if I can, anytime, or
At home
know,
or?
anywhere. Not as much as you, but
I know.
yeah.
I have, yes, exactly. So this piece is called Cousins.
Right.
By the way, for demos, a great place to get excerpts, because what you want to do is have, generally, we had such success with our students and creating demos for them, which we do, with 3 one-minute excerpts, right? And a great place to get them is from short stories, because you know the whole arc of the story, right? And some of our premier writers, like in New York, you get wonderful writing out of the short stories, or get a collection. I have a bunch of collections, like 2012 best short stories. Great place to get stuff. So this piece, just to let you know, is set like, I think in the 40s or 50s, and it's in New York, and I think everything else is explanatory. It's called Cousins, right? Who wrote it?
Charles Baxter.
Okay. So when you're ready, give it a shot.
Bunny, he said to me, sitting down into the booth with an audible expunging of air. He still used my childhood name. No one else did. He had roared through his trust fund money so fast that by the end of college, he was down to pocket change. Now his face had permanent alcoholic flush. He didn't give me a hug because we don't do that. I see you've gotten started. You're having a martini? I nodded. Morning tune-up, I said. Brave choice. Branford grinned, simultaneously waving down the server. Waitress, he said, pointing to my drink. I'll have one of those. Very dry, please, no olive. The server nodded before giving Brantford a thin, professional smile and gliding over to the bar. I asked Brantford how he was. I don't know. It's strange. Sometimes at night I have the feeling that I've murdered somebody. He stopped and glanced down at the tableware. Someone's dead. Only I don't know who or what or when I did
It's
it.
very good, right? This is great. I could listen to it. It's excellent. Here's the deal. When you look at the story, he's not drunk, right? He's just a drunk. It's in the morning. And so I know a friend that used to drink, and so the idea is not drunk. He's just in the morning. Maybe he's got a little bit of a head on. So it's not drunk now. And it's important to look at these kind of things because sometimes you have to Sherlock Holmes them out. He turned slightly, furrowed his brow, gripped his fingers until his hands was red and said, well, what's all that mean? And that happens a lot of times. Now, there's only one other thing I'm going to point out because it's picky, but it's something we all bump into, and that's the concept of attributions, he said, she said, after we say something. It's the weird part of reading a book aloud, isn't it? It's redundant. Well, there's a theory that when you read a book, you don't really see the he said, she said much. And the same thing orally. We don't bother with them. Scott's great at it because you go, hi, he said. What have you been doing, she said. Not much. How about you, she said. Just throw them away, right? But one thing that we oftentimes do is, especially with questions, is we don't get schizophrenic and come from the character back to the narrator. And I noticed that you said, yeah, you need to go from the character like, I don't know what I'm doing, he said. Otherwise,
You don't let it blend in.
yeah,
to
we
the
don't go,
dialogue.
I don't know what
From
you're
the
doing,
dialogue
he
to the-
said, right? You got to go back to it. And the other thing is, are you going home, he said? No, you got to get out of it. Are you going home? Then get back to
Yeah.
reporting it.
The
he said.
attribution, the he said or she said is the attribution. You're attributing it to a certain character. That's a statement, even if the dialogue's a question. How are you? He said.
Yeah, right here, Julie, like, waitress, you went,
Right.
he said, pointing to my drink, right? Waitress, he said, pointing to my drink. And it's a little bit of a, you get used to it, but,
So you drop it down a
yeah,
lot.
you don't, technically, I'm not referring to technically, because all your intuition choices are excellent. I do it differently, he would do it differently, but different, it's you. What you do is waitress, he's a character. Waitress, right? And I got the scene that you went, waitress, right?
Yeah.
Because he's waving his hand.
Yeah.
But then you have to go, he said, pointing to my drink. I'll have one of those, dry, please, no olive. The server nodded, right? So then you bounce back and forth between character. It's the dance.
The way I always look at it is whoever the narrator is, whether it's a first-person narrator like this one is, or a third-person narrator, to me, that's like neutral in your car. Or it's like on guard if you're sword fighting. You know, it's like you always go back to neutral. You always go back to on guard. You may attack, then you go back to on guard.
So pick it
I
up.
hate you, he said.
Pick it up from where you were. I asked Brantford how he was. Pick it up there and just continue on.
Okay, well, let me see, where is that?
I don't know. It's strange. He
Okay.
said his dreams.
I don't know, it's strange. Sometimes at night I have the feeling that I've murdered somebody. He stopped and glanced down at the tableware. Someone's dead. Only I don't know who or what or when I did it. Well, that's crazy, I said. You haven't killed anyone. Doesn't matter if I have or I haven't, he said. If it feels that way, maybe I should take a vacation. Brantford, I said. You can't take a vacation. You don't work. Oh, that's right. It's kind of a rule, isn't it? Well, I'd like to. Work, that is. Especially if you get a vacation out of it.
Give him a hand. Very nice.
Thank you.
If you ever have to do a drunk person, just be tired. You know? I mean, you can get sloppy. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I killed somebody. You can do that. But, you know, again, subtlety plays in audiobooks. Just play it tired.
Can we get that African American piece up here? You ready for that? There you are.
He's got it.
Oh, yeah, here's for us. Here you go.
Thank you so much.
Now, the good news about African American, they need African American readers a lot, and they're very PC, so they'll go with an African American if the author's an African American. And sometimes they'll go with an African American performer if it's a white guy. So it's not, it works, it's better. It's a little more equitable that way.
It depends on who the book's about.
Right, right. And so, what's your name?
My name's Low Bass.
Again?
Low Bass.
Low
Low
bass.
bass.
Yes.
Low bass.
Low Bass.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your interest in audiobooks?
Well, I'm actually a musician and a filmmaker.
I'm hoping so with low bass. I was hoping so.
My mama named me Low Bass, you know.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And you got Scott. How cool is that? Okay, so
So I'm a musician slash filmmaker, and I'm actually I'm putting together with two of my friends, animation series. And so we have to we're going to do all the voices and probably hire some actors also to do
yeah,
voices for us.
I do those voices.
So we probably can't afford you though. So
Scott's good at that too.
Oh, yeah.
Keep us in mind.
I'll
Okay, so
keep you in mind.
go ahead and hit it. You know, go ahead and start it off and
Okay, this
tell
is
us. Yeah, it's from what?
This is an excerpt from The Preacher by Robert James Allison. The old man looked at Todd with admiration in his eyes and said, "Why, I remember when I had to beg to go to grade school and you got all the way through college, got yourself a fine job and..." Todd cut him off gently and said, "Times have changed, Uncle." The old man stared carefully at his nephew's face and asked, "Sure, son, what's bothering you?" Todd smiled and said, "You always could read my mind. It comes from raising youngins. You get to know them so much you almost..."
Pick that up, because you know, when you get used to when you make a mistake, pick it up, because it'll always be there, right?
Don't power through like you're on stage.
Yeah.
Nobody notices.
Now, they'll rewind and
notice.
hear it.
Okay.
It comes from, right? And also, while you stop, when Todd cuts him off gently, get it up from there. Get yourself a job, and Todd cuts him off gently, right? And says, "Times have changed, Uncle." Now, here's a trick. Obviously, and then the next line, the uncle, the old man, says, "What's bothering you?" Because he knows, so you got to be gentle, but still have a little tude, right? Because he knows something's bothering him. It's not like it's terse. That would be easy. You know, he would say, "Times have changed, Uncle." No, it's gentle, but there's a problem. So good luck with that. Pick up your Oscar. Right?
Okay.
Okay, so Todd cut him off gently. Take it from there. I like the way it sounds, too, though. It sounds just right. And by the way, you know, his diction's soft within that, but it has to be. You know, don't think you have to snap up your diction for some of these pieces. I mean, it's all digital sound, and how far away is the listener? No more than 1.5 feet, like in a car, and a lot of times, earbud, eardrum, brain. They're right there. So you don't have to snap up your diction for things. No, no, no. And so that sounds good. It's like when I'd snap up my diction and work with Ed Asner, he'd go, "Hey, you're talking too good. You're talking too good." And I go, "What? People don't talk that way." So you sound good. So pick it up from Todd.
Todd cut him off gently and said, "Times have changed, Uncle." The old man stared carefully at his nephew's face and asked, "Sure, son, what's bothering you?" Todd smiled and said, "You always could read my mind. It comes from raising youngins. You get to know them so much, you almost become them. You raise them up to do what you want, what you couldn't do, and along the way..."
Pick it up from you raise them. Get used to your mistakes and don't worry about it. Just pick it up.
Oh, okay.
You raise them.
You raise them up to do what you couldn't do, and along the way, you become part of them and they become part of you. Ain't no magic in it, son. It's just natural. It's just family. Some families is closer than others. We was always close. You and me, we had to be to survive them days.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, the one thing, this is a good example that to bring up something, and Scott, you tell them about it, about dishonoring punctuation. Because this piece right in here, is the way people think. People don't think in sentences and paragraphs. And another way to look at it is an author is in punctuation prison, and we have the key to get him out. Because, after all, it's a symbol to let us know the end of a sentence is a period. A paragraph is an indent.
Punctuation doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in human speech. It's a human manufactured thing that we do to approximate human speech. It's a visual cue. Now, we have to turn those visual cues into oral cues. Now, sometimes authors will get a little lazy. I mean, I'm not here to tell authors how to write, but, like there were in this previous piece, brave choice, Branford grinned, simultaneously waving down the server. The way that's written is brave choice, comma, Branford grinned, simultaneously waving down the server. That means Branford grinned the line. You actually can't do that, The worst I ever had was, where is he? Over there, he gestured. And you notice the way I say that, it sounds like an attribution. Over there, he gestured. You can't gesture a line. You can't smile a line. You can't laugh a line. And you can't sing a line. Well, technically, whatever. But you know what I'm saying. So what I'll do, I'll sometimes dishonor the punctuation.
Show how you do
I'll
it with
say,
that one.
yeah. Brave choice. Branford grinned, simultaneously waving down the server. I just change the comma to a period. That's all I do. I make it sound like it's two sentences. Right. So it doesn't sound like the author is getting lazy. You ever do a TV show and you're doing a love scene with somebody, maybe you didn't do enough exercise, you got the love handle just a little too big, you put your arm in front of it. Am I wrong? You do. You learn to do it. You learn to protect who you're working with. And I'm here to make the author sound as the best that they possibly can. And I'm not here to judge their work. It's a fine line. I don't want to get on there and say, he wrote it wrong. It just doesn't sound right if I say it like an attribution.
Yeah, let me give you an example, like punctuation. We don't want to get into good dog syndrome. Because if we say something like, there's something wrong with my brother. I don't know what it is. He could be crazy. Yeah, that's what it is. He's crazy. Now I'm going down on every sentence, and the audience goes, he's done. No, he's not. He's good. Right? You're cueing the audience wrong. There's something wrong with my brother. I don't know what it is. Could be crazy. Yeah, that's what it is. You see, now I brought it. That's the way we think and feel and build. We build, and then go down. And I thought about because when Low Bass was doing that piece of that last guy, he's weaving through a lot of different things in that last paragraph. Take your time, because he's getting thoughts between them.
Yeah, I always call that reading it as though it was the first draft. Nobody writes in the final draft. God, if we could, we'd be making millions.
Freshly minted.
Yeah, basically, there's an old Shakespearean term that I learned from John Barton from the videos that he did with the RSC. He always said, you're in rep. You've done Romeo and Juliet 1,000 times, and yet you have to say it as though it was the first time, and he used the coin term. You have to say it, it's freshly minted every single time. And so you read it not like, I don't know why I beat the hell out of him. Just exactly what you just said. You ask it like it's a real question. I don't know why I beat the hell out of him. You discover it as though the author was discovering it. And the thing you really have to pay attention to is hypothetical questions. They will look like they're supposed to be asked as questions. But if you fall into that trap, you could say the line, "Who do you think you are, anyway?"
Yeah, 50% of all questions asked, not just rhetorical, you don't go up on the end. But we see it, we line up and go up, right? You understand?
Figure
See,
out
I
when
said
to-
you understand I didn't go up because it would be hinky. You understand?
You have to figure out when to break the rules. That's all. Do it judiciously.
I think there's a danger in over-preparing, and that's what the danger is. You don't want to read the book 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It can rob you of any freshness you might have. It becomes over-rehearsed.
Yeah, then you have to tap into the theater skill of doing something that's over-rehearsed and make it sound fresh. And we're really talking about in the moment. Try to give the impression that it's the first time. Do you want to do that Nora Ephron piece first, or you said you look like you want to come up bad. I do? Okay, come on. Yeah?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Come on.
Come on up.
Yeah.
Please.
Apparently you're gonna, so we're going with it.
Thank you.
Is this the one that you gave her, Jason?
Yeah, this is one of your scripts, isn't it, Jason?
Oh, this is the... Oh, this is delicious, yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, this is a Harlequin book, and Audible is the official publisher of Harlequin's audiobooks, so we get a lot of that work in. A lot of actors get their start reading Harlequin books or erotica books. It's, you know, it's a personal choice if you want to perform them or not. Some people, we call in some actors, and they read the book, and they say, you know what, I'd really rather not do it. That's fine. Just discover that before you agree to take on the job or ask to read the script first. But if you read the script that our producer sends to you and you don't want to do it, just call back and say, oops, sorry, I don't want to take it. Doesn't mean you won't get called back again. We don't hold that against you at all, and I mean that. So we call actors all the time who've turned down 2 or 3 earlier projects because they just didn't feel right about performing them. So whatever, go with your gut.
What's that term, the industry term for a romance book, old school?
Bodice rippers.
Bodice rippers.
Now, those are the old school romances where, you know, everybody's wearing like the blousy shirts and the bustiers, you know. In those kind of books, you know it's a bodice ripper if you see one of 2 words. And amazingly, they're always used together. The words are heaving and bosom.
But
Oh,
now,
also ample, which you never hear with anything else but bosom and parking. So what's your name, dear?
Susan Douglas Clare.
And what do you have there? What kind of book? Is that the Harlequin?
Yes.
And you're okay
yes,
with
is.
it?
I am.
All right.
this is more just, this is more like chick lit, I'd say. I'd put this more in the chick lit category. But a lot of what we do also is like
Well, I'll give it a
romance. It's
shot.
paranormal romance or vampire romance and things like that. This one's pretty straightforward, chick lit.
Okay, so
Woman getting back at the man.
yeah. So when you're ready, okay?
Okay. Penny Jackson knew it was probably wrong to be so excited to see her ex-husband come crawling back, but she was willing to live with the character flaw. You know, he's going to want to hire you, her friend Naomi said. Oh, yeah.
Good. It's good.
I messed up.
No, we don't care about the
Okay,
messing up.
okay.
Yeah, just slow down.
Slow down? Okay.
Yeah, and here's a trick, or not a trick, it's a technique we teach, is that breathe as you, the storyteller, would breathe. Right now, you're the storyteller. You're in charge.
Okay.
And sometimes I mumble the words. I'll go, Penny so-and-so, da-da-da-da. So, because, you know, we're told, like, in so many areas of performance, breathing's bad. Get it over with, or let's not hear it. But that's part of a performance. And so breathe a couple times and then start it. It'll remind you that you're in charge and you can breathe when you want. Right?
Okay.
And there's something else that, since we're stopped, I'll go ahead and say this now. When authors give you irony, it's like, you know, they're begging you to play it. The wonderful part about the beginning of this, you know, it's a third-person narrator who is sitting in judgment on the main character. If they ever say, like, you know, oh yeah, the 2 things I liked best about her was her face. You know, you have to say it that way. You know, or, you know, Sickly Sweet, oh, the 2 things I like best about her are her face. You know, you have to play the irony. And that, what I love about the opening line of this is, she's making a character judgment about this person. She loves this person. She's like, well, she knew it was wrong, but she's willing to live with the character flaw. You know, go ahead and give it just a little, invest it with just a little bit more of that feel. I mean, you're sharing a secret about them with us. So feel kind of the way that they would feel about it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Penny Jackson knew that it was probably wrong to be so excited to see her ex-husband come crawling back, but she was willing to live with the character flaw. You know, he's going to want to hire you, her friend Naomi said. Oh, yeah, the sweet smell of validation. Penny leaned back in her chair and considered the possibilities. I want him to beg. Not in a vicious, I hate your guts way, but more as a show of support for divorced women everywhere, Naomi asked. Penny laughed. Exactly.
There's a place where you go, da-da-da-da, Naomi asked. You go back to reporting it. Because you
Okay.
went, Naomi asks, you're
Okay.
following along with it. Also, just go back before you go in the chair and she has the line, let's hear you settle in that chair as you talk. That's the thing that
Okay.
peels it off the page and gets us right in the scene. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Okay, just anywhere south of that and read into it. You sound great. Sound good.
Thank you.
Right.
I was going to add one thing, maybe delineate between the characters a little bit more so that the listeners don't get confused.
A
Who's
little more
talking when.
what they call separation.
Okay.
And
Maybe give one of them sometimes actors want to give one of them an accent, like one of the, the lesser characters, give them whatever you want, a New York accent, a Southern accent, whatever you want to do, just something so you can distinguish between the two.
Or like who's the really kind of snide one on Sex and the City, the one who's like, what was that? Samantha. Right, exactly. You don't even have to do an accent. You can just give it kind of an attitude, support for, wronged women everywhere. That, that kind of holier than thou, I know more than you do kind of thing, but whatever you want.
Okay. Oh, yeah. The sweet smell of validation. Penny leaned back in her chair and considered the possibilities. I want him to beg. Not in a vicious, I hate your guts way, but more as a, show of support for divorced women everywhere? Naomi asked. Penny laughed. Exactly. I suppose that makes me petty and small. Maybe, but you're looking especially fabulous today, if that helps. A little. Penny smoothed the front of her loose sweater and glanced at the clock.
Take that back now when you make a mistake. Get
Okay.
used to it.
A little. Penny smoothed the front of her loose sweater and glanced at the clock. We're meeting for lunch downtown, a neutral location, no memories, good or bad. Stay away from the good ones, Naomi warned her.
Now, see,
I
stay
did
away
it.
from the good
Good
ones. Naomi warned her.
Okay. Stay away from the good ones, Naomi warned her. You always were a sucker where Cal was concerned. Penny arrived early, then stayed in her car until 5 minutes after the appointed time. A small, possibly insignificant power play on her part, but she figured she'd earned it.
Yeah,
She wa-
really,
You know what?
you sound great.
Yeah.
I listen to it. I'm going, okay, I'd be in the car with that. Well, I don't know about that book, because you. But it's good, and you have a very listenable voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say, no one wants to be in a car with Al Pacino for 10 hours. It's an unusual medium. We want a kind of neutral. I mean, Scott's kind of vanilla, and so you can live. I'm like listen to a lot of his stuff, and I love it because it can go. You can listen to it for a long time. You have that, and you're getting into those characters as you get a little more comfortable up here.
And you notice what she does, she puts a lot of character into the narrator. And I love that. People always ask me, should you do that? Yes, you should do that. Authors want you to do that. There's a how-to book by Orson Scott Card, the science fiction author, and he says quite often when he does a third-person narrator, he intends it to be not the main character, but very similar to the main character, so that that narrator can get into the head of the main character and share with us how they feel. So when Pat was saying, let's hear that kind of settling into the chair, I thought maybe she was going to do it on the line.
Me too.
I want him to beg. But you know what she did? She goes, she settled back into the chair. She did it on the narrative.
And we buy
which is
that all day
wonderful.
long as a listener.
Oh, yeah.
We want to be guided into how we're supposed to think and feel by the narrator.
Sometimes it'll say, that somebody sighed, and then it won't immediately have a line of dialogue. The narrator will say, she sighed. Then she went off and did her business or whatever. And I'll go, she sighed. Then she went off and did her business. I try to put it in there somehow, just a little, to add the character to it, because you know what? Narrative can be death. It can be. If the entire story is narrative, oh my God. Faulkner, Jesus. But he's brilliant. And when you learn to treat the narrative as acting, it's a person. It's just not the person in the story.
But it shapeshifts also a third-person narrative, and I think it gives you the opportunity. Mary walks into the kitchen, and you're seeing it from her point of view, and then maybe you cut to the den where Bob is watching television, and it's the same narrator who's taking you through the house into each person's room. But it's a great opportunity to slightly shift that narrator's attitude based on who they're watching.
Yeah.
Mary may be mad at Bob.
It can be
Bob
very
may
subjective.
have no idea.
Yeah, it can.
It's a follow shot.
Yeah,
It's a follow shot, exactly.
She was walking down the hallway, not sure of what she would find. She took a few steps closer to the kitchen. there was a man with a baseball bat waiting for her. I've just shipped it from her to him. But it could be she was walking down the hallway, almost next to the kitchen. There was a baseball bat. You know, you could go the other way. What guides you? Your intuition. There's no time. You just go with how you think it sounds cool.
Just try to always make sure that you're bringing something to the story. Sometimes, especially if you're not very familiar with a piece or you're not familiar with the genre, you're going to read it kind of neutral. Don't be neutral. Try to give it just, don't give it too much, but don't give it too little. Because, I'm just going to go back at random, that last piece, the Charles Baxter thing, it could always be, morning tune-up. Brave choice. I don't know, it's strange. There's nothing invested there. You want it, this is bantering. You need to add that little bit.
Banter it.
I see you've gotten started. You're having a martini? Morning tune-up, I said. Brave choice. Waitress, I'll have one of those. Very dry, please. No olive. I don't know. It's strange. Sometimes at night, I have the feeling that I've murdered somebody. I'm not reading it like it. You can get away with doing neutral. You can get away with it, and that's good. But good is not good enough. To me, good enough isn't.
Nice job.
Good. You want some,
Thank you. Thank
she's
you.
got a sweater for you. Do you want to do more questions or a few more as we wrap up, or would you
I think
like
we
to
have
change?
one more person prepared. But in the meantime, before that person comes up, one thing that's great about
Thank you
him.
very much.
nice
Lovely
job.
job.
Nice job.
Really
Give a hand to her for,
Are recording and you make a mistake, do you just go back and read over it and then they edit it out, or do you they do?
That's right.
Okay. I just wanted to
You
make
go
sure.
back to where you're comfortable, and as you get more plucky and comfortable, like Hillary, she'll go back to the nearest comma. Because it's a railroad. You don't want to go back, let me do the whole paragraph. No, you keep going.
And the thing about mistakes, if you make the mistake several times in a row, tough, maybe it's a foreign language. I had to do a book that had so much German, it was set in Nazi Germany. And it basically, it happened at the end of a sentence. The beginning of the next sentence was the hard part, this phrase, Obersturmbannführer Helmut von Hürten-Mitnitz. Yeah. Holy crap. I mean, it's like, he sat down. Helmut von Hürten-Mitnitz, and then I'd mess up. I went back to he sat down. Helmut von Hürten-Mitnitz, and even if I read it correctly, that take is useless.
Yeah.
Because I have to match, he sat down. Even if you're pissed off, be pissed off, let it out, and then go, Helmut von Hürten-Mitnitz sat down. Whatever it is, always match what you just did.
It's another technique is that as we get something, have a difficulty in pronunciation, you're going to make this mistake at the same place 3 or 4 times, and then that's what happens. Don't go, we tend to intuitively go faster to let ourselves know or somebody know that we get it. No, if the word's hard to say, yeah, right. If the word's hard to say, it's usually hard to understand when you listen to it. So you want to go slower. And if you have 2 or 3 takes, the trick is get a little more quiet on that one. Quiet will cut, getting louder won't. And generally that irritation that you have inside tends to make you a little loud anyway. So try to think a little quieter. There's a little hard technique.
And just remember, everybody makes mistakes. Even Scott doesn't read a whole book without mistakes. You're going to do it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I had to let it out.
So also to answer your question, how will it be edited? There'll be an engineer who will do a technique called punch and roll, and they'll kind of basically roll the tape back and record over that sentence. And one of the things that you as an actor might learn if you have a home studio is how to do this punch and roll technique yourself. So you won't be, you'll be recording and doing pickups and sort of put it simply in Pro Tools, like putting the cursor back a few words so that to pick up where you left off, and you'll learn how to do this. It probably takes anywhere from a couple hours to a couple audiobooks of practice to learn how to do it, but it's not something you would do the first time, or we'd expect you to do. It's a technique that you learn over time, and when you learn and master it, it makes you a more diverse performer.
Yes, but I've got to tell you, both Scott and I, the problem with punch and roll is that when you get on a roll on something, to have that it's tough. So what Scott will do is he'll punch and roll. Hillary loves it, right? You love punch and roll. Okay. But Scott, he'll get into a groove and he'll go, okay, I'll do it old school. I'll edit during this time and I'm just going to keep going because I'm in the right pocket for a passage, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. And before we call the next person up, I just wanted to mention this book, Delicious, is a great example of the kind of book that a producer can cast in a number of different ways. They could cast it with, you can go black or white, you could go northern, southern, eastern, western. There's a lot of choices that the producer can make in casting it. It's the content of the book doesn't dictate exactly how it must be cast. And if you're looking around the ACX website for books to perform, a lot of times the publisher or the author who posted the book might think they want something, but learn that they want something different. So we had an example a few months ago where there's a best-selling sci-fi series called Wool that was posted, and the author sent a note out and posted on their website to their fans, and he said, help me find a narrator on ACX, and the fans ended up choosing a female narrator, which was, kind of a little bit thinking outside the box, especially for sci-fi, and so you never know. So there's a lot of books where it's not very clear. This has to be a man, it has to be a woman, it has to be African American or whatever. So this is a good example of that with Delicious.
Thank
So
you.
thanks.
And I have, just the Midwestern accent, so I don't know that, calling me in for particular parts, I'm kind of, around the border,
Well,
I
you can
guess.
do it, you've got an option because you don't sound African American with an accent. And so, but you should learn how to do it if you can't. I mean, we have students.
Oh, honey,
that are-
Chad, I can do whatever you ask me to do.
Okay. Well, forget, yeah, exactly, apparently. Thank you
But
for a hand
reading,
again.
the
Thank you.
Midwestern thing is,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, let's have one last person up.
There, the Nora Ephron piece.
Yes.
Okay. Crazy Salad. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Celia.
Celia?
Celia, yes.
And what's your interest in audiobooks?
I like reading out loud, and I love the idea of sitting alone in a room with no makeup on. Just really appeals to me.
Good. Me too.
I'm not lazy.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. What was I going to ask you? Oh, if you want to be trained or you want to have your demo done, you can get hold of me, and we train and teach. That's my plug for us both. We oftentimes, the three of us, work together
Great.
in training and doing demos. So give it a shot there.
Okay.
All right.
My first brassiere came from Robinson's department store in Beverly Hills. I went there alone, shaking, positive that they would look me over and smile and tell me to come back next year. An actual fitter took me into the dressing room and stood over me while I took off my blouse and tried the first one on. The little puff stood out on my chest. "Lean over," said the fitter. To this day, I'm not sure what fitters in bra departments do except tell you to lean over. I leaned over with the fleeting hope that my breasts would miraculously fall out of my body and into the puffs. Nothing. "Don't worry about it," said my friend Libby some months later when things had not improved. "You'll get them after you get married." What are you talking about?" I said. "When you get married," Libby explained, "your husband will touch your breasts and rub them and kiss them and they'll grow." That was the killer. Necking I could deal with, intercourse I could deal with, but it had never crossed my mind that a man was going to touch my breasts.
Wow. That's awful good. I have a couple things that I want you to mention. That's really good. I mean, it's like now we have to.
I
yeah.
never did.
No, it's great.
Well,
I love it.
no, she has a voice with a
Delivery.
dusty pitch characteristic, but it's really good to hear, isn't it? It's like, it's interesting. The thing about, this is about a piece like this. You're a little loud. So
You know, I felt that when I was in the
Right.
microphone. I could hear
you
it
just need to
reverberate.
get that adjustment. Everyone does that. They're really close to you, and
Yeah.
you're just really talking to them about like that.
Oh, that'd be
That's
great.
the one adjustment. The other thing is there's a couple missed opportunities. That's what I think of them. Did you grow up around here, or?
Born in Missouri, grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, but
Then the answer's no.
no. I've been all over in all parts. I can do a little
Okay, well,
country
no,
comes out
here's my question.
sometimes.
See, this is about, this, Bullock's Wilshire is a certain kind of store.
Yes.
And she's a certain age, so she
Beverly
was a
Hills, yeah.
teenager in the 60s.
Yes.
So what kind of women were
I
in
was
those
too.
shops
Yes.
then helping people with lingerie?
Right. Yes.
They were elegant,
Yes.
overly coiffed women. So just look at that character there
The
of
fitter,
her.
you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that character and read her line like that. Let me hear
Okay.
that, just that line.
The fitter's line? Or
Yeah,
Nora's?
with that character, that in mind, overly coiffed, of an age, probably retired, maybe in those days, 50, 55.
Lean over, said the fitter. To this day, I'm not sure what fitters
Yeah,
in
the
Broad-
lean over is like
Lean over.
grand dame.
Lean over.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, the other thing is that these teenagers that are talking, these are the 60s, early teenagers, so they're not cynical, and you did it well. They're not caustic, cynical, they're not like they are now, right? Okay,
Yeah.
more like Anne Margaret and Bye Bye Birdie, right?
Yes,
But
I know
think
that.
about the concept of what happened just before the scene. When she said, "Don't worry about it," right? Teenagers have agenda, and what's happened just before that is the girl said, "I still don't have breasts, what am I going to..." And the other teenager, they want to get on with their agenda. So don't worry about it, your husband will take care of that, it's going to happen. In other words, they want to go on with their life. You think about kids, that, yeah, it's all right, she's been complaining about it, you see? That'll give you some drive for the scene between the two kids.
Okay.
They what? So just do that part, read into that part, and let me hear that, because there's a missed opportunity to two teenage girls in the 60s, and one of them's going, "Will you shut up about the little breasts?"
I was thinking of her as an adult, remembering that, coming from the adult voice. I hadn't thought of going back to the character of the time. Yes.
Well, it's a memoir, but
I
it's
see
an
what you're saying.
opportunity. It's not
Yes,
like you have to
yes.
do a little play.
Yeah.
But yeah, go back to those
Okay.
characters.
Oh, that's fun. All right.
Yeah. So read into it from the narrator and slow your tempo a little. It's a little heightened and a little quieter.
Okay. My first brassiere came from Robinson's department store in Beverly
Going
Hills.
too fast.
Oh,
Yeah. My first brassiere
Okay.
came from Robinson's department store, and remember it and bring us along, because we're going, okay, right? Bring us along. It's about us, not you. We got to bring us along, hook us in.
my first brassiere came from Robinson's department store in Beverly Hills. I went there alone, shaking, positive that they'd look me over and smile and tell me to come back next year. An actual fitter took me into the dressing room and stood over me while I took off my blouse and tried the first one on. The little puff stood out on my chest. Lean over, said the fitter. To this day, I'm not sure what fitters in broad apartments do except tell you to lean over. I leaned over with the fleeting hope that my breast would miraculously fall out of my body and into the puffs. Nothing. Oh, don't worry about it, said my friend Libby some months.
We're irritated.
Oh, okay.
Now, I could be a director giving you what I have in my
That's okay.
mind, or an actor giving another actor a choice. But try it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, for
No.
Pete's sake, shut up.
Nothing. Don't worry about it, said my friend Libby
Now,
some
slow down. Don't
Oh,
worry about it. Now report, said
Okay.
my friend Libby, as we blah, blah, blah. Right?
Don't worry about it, said my friend Libby some months later, when things had not improved. You'll get them after you get married. What are you talking about? I said. When you get married, Libby explained, your husband will touch your breasts and rub them and kiss them, and they'll grow. That was the killer. Necking I could deal with, intercourse I could deal with, but it had never crossed my mind that a man was going to touch my breasts.
Yes, very good. See, now you got something that drives that little scene. There's a little bit of conflict, and that's the nucleus of all scene, and we're always looking for that conflict, because that's the center of all storytelling, is conflict. And then that drove, and then the humor is realized because of the...
And when you add something like that, you take what was really a very good reading and you make it a great reading. I mean, whenever we hear
it's
somebody
fun.
who does, something like that, and you got to come up with something afterwards.
Yeah.
My grandmother used to always say it's picking fly shit out of the pepper. Pardon me, those people at home.
Noel Coward, isn't that?
Yeah, I believe it
think
is.
so.
No, Coward just said that. But it's true. And yet, nevertheless, like I said, subtly plays. And if you can add just that little hint of character that you did to the best friend, it just plays for miles in the final product.
Particularly in
So
your
nice job.
demos, because you want publishers and producers to go, oh, she gets it. Oh, I don't think I want to go, she said, laying down the chair. The producers go, oh, she knows how to realize story and some interesting choices, something that we encourage in demo work. Very good.
Thank you.
Give her a hand.
So
I love the intimacy
one of the things that we
of doing it
thank you.
just this year. I love that.
We didn't get to circle back to the details about a demo, and we have to close up for the evening, but I will say that on Scott's website, which is scottbrickpresents.com, there's a lot of great information about how to prepare a demo and what you should put in your demo. So check that out.
There's also a link to the classes that we do. It's basically a blog. I tried to answer a frequently asked questions list, the 20 most asked questions about a demo. It's on there. If there's something that you don't see, you can contact me through the website. You can contact Pat through his, patfraley.com. And
on my website, patfraley.com, there's a free lesson page, and I have several lessons, videos that are free. You don't have to sign up or publish on audiobook narration skills. And also on there, you'll see a schedule because we teach together.
Yeah.
But
And
patfraley.com, there's free stuff.
Yes. Yeah, many dozens of their students have been winning work on ACX, which is great. Really, it really gives you a leg up to take kind of a longer class than the workshop we've been able to do today.
and we take all the credit.
Yeah.
All of it.
And if
Firstborn.
and ACX is as I said has a toll-free number. It's on every page of the website, and you can call and ask for tips and assistance as well. And if I leave you with kind of one thing to remember from tonight, it really is that the audiobook business is booming. It's expanding year over year, and this growth means a lot more work for actors. And as I mentioned, Audible studios are doing thousands of audiobooks a year. ACX is turning out thousands of audiobooks every year, and the publishers that I listed earlier are all turning out a lot of books as well. So there's really a lot of work to be won, and we want you guys to be the best performers you can be, and we're here to help. Thank you.
I want to add something, too. We have one magazine in our industry, which is called AudioFile Magazine, Audio F-I-L-E magazine, and you should all get it and read it. It's AudioFile Magazine, and in fact, the publisher emailed me today and said she wished she knew we were doing this. She would have sent copies for you all. But what she did give me was the address, and you can see the online edition. And what is it? I forgot.
Casey.
Casey, what is it?
What's that?
Audiofilemagazine.com.
No.
No, there was something in front of it.
What's that? I've got the note for it here. Hold on.
So you can go online and read it. And the other thing is we have one sort of industry, which is Audio Publisher Association. And every year there is a conference, and it's a great site to just learn about the audiobook world as well. And that's audiopub.org. It's our trade group.
And it
So
usually
those are-
runs the day before the book expo.
Right. Audiopub.org, and
Here it is now. Here's my intern, Casey. He's gonna. Casey, come here. When I tell you that horses have eggs, what do?
Grease the pan.
Grease the pan. Good. Okay. Here's the URL for what? What is this for
it's
again?
digital.audiofilemagazine.com, and you can see the magazine's online, but you should all subscribe to it.
Digital.audiofile.
Not dot. Digital.audiofilemagazine.com. File with an F.
It's a great resource, as is audible.com, because as Jason said at the very beginning, listen to audiobooks. You don't have to listen to the whole thing if you go to one of those two websites. Audiofilemagazine.com is going to have reviews of whatever's come out recently. You can hear an excerpt from it there, as you can with every book on Audible. Listen to the same kind of genre you think you might be working in or that you're auditioning for. If it's a Da Vinci Code knockoff, go listen to the Da Vinci Code. Paul Michael did it. It's brilliant. Hear him do 3 minutes, 5 minutes, however long the snippet is, and it'll give you a sense for, how that genre is handled on audio. Then you can compare it to bodice rippers, or what have you.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks for coming.